Welcome to Faith Works Live. Here's your host, Rebecca Haney.
Welcome to the jungle. We have fun and games. This is Rebecca on Faith Works Live. And did you like that intro? I was debating about which post-apocalyptic anthem to use. Joel Kurtinitis is our excellent special guest, frequent contributor to the show, political analyst, longtime libertarian sympathizer, rebel with a cause, aspiring metaphysician, and any of the other things. Do you have any other accolades I should add to your ever hyphenated list, Joel?
Oh, nothing yet, but I tell you what, I'm cringing a little bit at anything involving the word libertarian today, despite myself.
Dude, we'll get to that. Time permitting. Joel Kurtinitis is going to help us analyze the end of the world as we know it, which I almost selected as our intro, but I figured it was a little too on the nose. Also an awesome party trick if you know all the lyrics, or at least for 90s kids. We spent way too much time memorizing Leonard Bernstein. Joel, I am wondering if we are now in our... First of all, are the rumors true? Is this the end of the Republic as we sit in the shadow of the pretty much anticipated and almost certain from the beginning of the trial outcome? Still pretty outrageous, obviously politicized trial and now conviction of Donald Trump on 34 felony counts of doesn't matter. Is this the end of the Republic as we know it? And why do I feel fine?
Republic, you say that like we have a functional republic.
Is there one?
I think your optimism is unbounded.
Yet again.
No, I mean we live in a world that's all style instead of substance, and that's all theatrics. And so that's what this is. This is theatrics. Nobody's going to the guillotine. Nobody's going to the gallows. It's pure theatrics. It's base turnout, and I've seen the effects of that right away. I have enough leftist friends still on my Facebook friends list that I can see them, exulting and just celebrating all of this because they just wanted that win very badly. They just wanted another finger pointing from the legal system saying Orange Man bad, and so I think that's what they were after. There's probably going to be a boost in turnout enthusiasm for Democrats after this conviction. And that's what they're after. They're prepared to apparently deal with the repercussions of it on the right. I think that's maybe misplaced confidence, but be that as it may, I think this is going to be mostly a nothing burger by the time it's done. It's certain to be overturned on appeal. And I think they know that. I think they don't care because what they want is the headlines and the press and the poll bump that's sure to come from it.
Well, and you say that I'd like to analyze I would say the outrage on both sides, the glee on either side, and the working of this, as you said, the optics of this from the political machination side. Because I think a lot of Americans are, whether or not you agree with Trump, and maybe there are people that are so anti-Trump that they're looking at this and saying, yes, justice is done. There's a few people that are like that. Most of the people that I talk to, not just like dyed-in-the-wool Republicans, but just the average independent voter, they're saying, yeah, this kind of looks like a rigged game. Like when you have the prosecutors coming into power with the promise that we're going to get Donald Trump, basically we've got to point me towards a crime. We're on a crime finding mission just to make sure that if whatever we can get to stick to Donald Trump, that's their promise. We're going to jail the guy. And that looks like persecution. It looks like lawfare. It looks like rigging the American political system rather than justice serving all, that instead we're now prosecuting with the intent to put in jail our political enemies. What is that but not the long arm of the law coming, or the guise of the law coming in and now becoming this plutocracy, basically, that if this can happen to Donald Trump, then nobody is safe. And as long as you get a lawyer and a favorable judge or a favorable jury, they can accuse you of anything regardless of evidence, and the facts and the law and justice don't matter anymore. That is very disturbing. Even if you hate Donald Trump, that ought to disturb you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does me as well. I think that stuff like this, well, again, I'll circle back to the libertarian part on this, small L libertarian part. But, a lot of us have been crying wolf about the justice system for a really long time, because it's a point well made by Tim Pool and others that have that sort of same libertarian bent. This stuff's been going on for ages on the streets. It's just that now it's, now that it's in the news, I think the earthquake that you're seeing right now, and obviously there's political overtones to it that are, like you said, a threat to the democratic system. But the process that was followed in this, the sham process that was just, intended to get a conviction from the start, that does go on pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Only it's people that are accused of drug crimes or whatever that you've never heard of. Then in that case, you've got Republicans generally saying, we're pro law enforcement, back the blue, yada, yada, yada. And when you get into the court system, that miscarriage of justice is usually ignored because it's people that, are not in the news and nobody cares about them. But I think it's important to kind of see the correlation between that and what's going on now, how easy it actually is for anybody involved in the justice system to manufacture a conviction. I think that's something that really has to be pointed out because, everybody's saying that it could happen to me. It's been happening to people like us for a long time. It's just that there's been a little bit of cover for it because of, I think, some ideological attachment to, the inherent purity of the American justice system, which is kind of, for a while.
It's all depend, and again, that youthful optimism springs anew. That I love. You and I both love studying the founding of the nation. We love the American dream, the American experiment, the brilliance of America's founding vision, and again, seeking to continue to realize its promise. And it cannot be overstated how much of that is based on what John Adams famously termed the moral and religious people, that without the hand of God and without a people that was dedicated to understanding God and recognizing their duty toward him and to their fellow man because of their duty to God, that the Constitution, wonderful as it was, wasn't even going to work. That nothing can stand. This system can't be built on the shifting sands of popular opinion, which is why we have a republic and not a direct democracy. And I did want to hat tip Nikki Truesdell because she was delivering some fun facts about the famous Benjamin Franklin quote that's now receiving viral fame anew, that came from a journal kept by James McHenry. So he was a Maryland delegate. Again, we're going into fun facts territory. Maryland delegate to the Constitutional Convention. And he describes the events on that day. And he's the one that captures this interaction between Benjamin Franklin and a woman on the street. He says a lady asked Dr. Franklin, well, doctor, what have you given us, a republic or a monarchy? And Franklin says, a republic, if you can keep it. And I think that's the biggest if in history. I think we've been living in, a pretty good, if not always perfect, last couple centuries of this experiment. And I think a lot of people are now looking at this and saying, we've lost it already.
Yeah, it's very plausible that we've started down that road. And like you said, that when the foundation is gone, if the foundations be removed, what can the righteous do? Yeah. And so when you have an entire section of the populace that has no idea what their own morality is based on, where you have tribalism taking over, and you see people reacting to judicial and legal decisions based on the outcome rather than just the process. I see real scary places that can take us. This is not the first time that sort of human nature has been unleashed. In fact, that's the norm throughout history. And what's really interesting to me, though, is when you have that, the statement that you made against democracy. Part of the natural result of democracy is that it ends up in tyranny and usually dictatorship. I mean, it usually goes not gradually up the other way, but to the immediate polar opposite, because people are wired to be manipulated if they're without the founding and the basis of absolute truth from Scripture. And so I think we're seeing some of that now. There's that cynicism that goes with it that just says, well, politically, then the ends justify the means. Anything goes. We throw out the rule book. We scorched earth. We go the Kavanaugh route and bring up rape accusations. Like nothing is forbidden. when it comes to that side of things, because the ultimate virtue is just power. Right. And so I do think that that's the mindset of the left in this. I do not know if it will play out the way that they expect, but I do think that's the mindset going into it. Is this is a zero-sum game, and they know that if it does backfire and Trump does get elected again, a lot of heads are going to roll, and figuratively. In case I was listening, figuratively, yes, heads are going to roll.
Metaphorically,
jobs. I'm talking about jobs, people. Yeah. So. Yeah. What did he say? What Trump himself say that? Oh, the bloodbath. It was the bloodbath. Yes, there'll be a bloodbath. Yeah.
Aside from the fact that literally can even be used figuratively.
I know. Kids these days, right?
What a world! What a world.
Indeed. But yeah, I think that's where we're at, and I think that it's a pure power play. I think it's a pure optics play, and there is no longer a functional division between political strategy and legal reality at this point for the party in power.
Wow. So I think you said a lot there. And what it reminds me, though, is that there's really we take the same set of information. People talk about the divide in the nation and how we only kind of we've siloized ourselels. We're in our own echo chambers. We talk to the people that think like us, and there's this increasing danger that you're othering the quote unquote other side, and that we're not having dialogue, and it is breeding, and I think intentionally so, a distrust of anyone not like you or sources outside of those things. That's all a pretty dangerous kind of undercurrent that's been going on in our society. It has been worsened by events, not just in the last decade, but in the last couple of years. Folks no longer trust. The distrust runs so deep. The concern that I have, though, is that we're now almost incapable, if you maybe take two average people from the either side of the stereotypical aisle. They can look at the exact same set of facts and come to two different sets of conclusions, and there is no Venn diagram. There's no, the circles don't even meet in the middle, because people can look at just the circumstances of this trial, and if they decide that they're anti-Trump, then it really doesn't matter about the details. They'll look at all of this as though justice is being done. Nobody is above the law. Hooray. It's fine. It's been a long time coming, and he should be locked up. Never mind the fact that they probably chafed under the sentiments of lock her up that Donald Trump spoke from the debate stage. That was no bueno, but it's okay to say it about Donald Trump. So we'll just put a pin in that for now. And then on the other side, we see travesty of justice, end of the republic, the weaponization of the American legal system. Is anything worth fighting for? Upside down American flags appealing in protest. We're in distress. What do we do? Everybody basically like pitchforks out on election. Metaphorically, out on election day and take it to the ballot box. Like Joe Biden's out there saying this is a win for democracy because we're going to put Trump in jail, basically, which how that's not a violation of the Hatch Act, I don't even know. But let me just read like 3 of the last text messages, which I've been getting incessantly from the Trump campaign because they still won't take my number off their lists.
I feel your pain there.
Here, Donald Trump, I live from Trump Tower, my first time speaking as a political prisoner. Corrupt and rigged. I just finished speaking at Trump Tower. I will never surrender. The trial was rigged. Rebecca, because of course it's addressed to phone user here. Do you think I'm guilty on this rigged trial? We need 1 million responses by midnight. Just like it's all political fodder. One side's using exactly the same set of facts to drive their base, and the Democrats have banked everything on, the belief that they can raise a pure incompetent to the presidency yet again under the guise that they can stick the other guy in jail. And the Republicans are doing exactly the same thing. They're saying, look at how hard they're fighting against me. They're using the precise same circumstances here. And they both think that it will benefit them. And I'm wondering how on earth this can possibly be true. But I mean, who do you think is right?
Well, I mean, when you abandon God, you abandon reason. And I think there's no reason or reasonability going on right now. There's just kind of advanced stage tribalism. Or I won't say none. There's very little that's happening. And I do think that's a reflection, and it's fair to say that that's a reflection of the stakes. When you look at the country, when you look at the immigration crisis, when you look at the economy, when you look at the very real and imminent potential of World War III breaking out, I get that the stakes are incredibly, incredibly high, and that the struggle for power in this country has reached a stage where I think people are, reasonably scared for not just, public policy, but the future of our families. And not in the distant future, like someday this could pan out in socialism, but in the, are we going to get into a nuclear conflict in the next year sort of worry? Or is the economy going to crash in the next year? Those types of things that people are weighing. So I get that when you're in that mindset, it's not very easy to sit back and go, all right, what were the facts of the case? How did the judge behave? What was the basis of the prosecution? All of these things, that they're not at the forefront of your mind when looking at the upcoming election. And I think, again, that's kind of why they got away with it. Is that the stakes are so high that the details kind of fall by the wayside. And so I think it's valid, though, to say that they've run opposite directions with it. And it's certain that Team Trump was not surprised by this.
Right.
Nobody was surprised by this. I mean, we've all known that was the plan all along. The question was just whether they could get enough jurors to go along with it. And so, of course, all those text messages that we've been getting spammed with, that's all been, those were probably written 3 months ago,
Right. That's what
and
I was
scheduled
thinking too.
3 months ago. None of these things are new. And so it mostly is. So what I'll say is it's a cynical play from the left. And it is, I think, purely optical. I don't think there's any chance that he's actually going to really suffer. I don't think there's any chance that he's going to spend any meaningful time behind bars. And although given the option, I think if I were his campaign team, I might stay there long enough to get a few photos, just for the fundraising element, But I think it's cynical on their side, but I also think they may have underestimated the blowback from it. It presumes their victory. And I think that's what makes me uneasy about the whole thing, is only somebody who was quite confident that they were going to win, it seems like to me, would chance something like this, because the recourse that could come if they lose seems very severe.
Yeah. Well, and it's set up a situation. Again, I think the loser in all of this, of course, is the American people, because we now continue to further the ever deepening distrust in our system. And you mentioned, like, libertarians have been crying against the system and crying about the flaws for quite some time. But part of the benefit of the conservative point of view is to say, look at the good that can be established. Is we can reform. We need to learn and to have those blind spots illuminated where there is corruption. Absolutely. I mean, people talk about the fallen world all the time, at least in Christian circles, but sometimes we almost discount that when it comes to systems created by human beings, and forget that when we put human beings in government, they don't become holy. They don't become angels. The better angels don't apply to government jobs, is what I'm saying, broadly writ. And if you work in the government, I said what I said. I am concerned yet again that there are so many people that distrust the system. It just keeps disintegrating underneath. And as you said, it's become about power for the top, power for the elites, and the people that continue to further this, continue to divide the American nation, all of us as individual citizens, because it's almost like we become the puppets in their game, and they have to remain at the top so they can be in power. And the more that they can subdivide all of us, then the easier it is to control everything, because then we turn to those same people that are doing that division, and then we look to them for the answers. And they're there as the trusty elites that know better than you how to spend your money, how to live your life, how to tell you what's right and wrong, how to teach, how to transform your kids, pun very much intended. And they are the ones ready to provide all the answers. They'll be the solution. They'll keep you safe. They'll yada, 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 just lock you in your house, put a mask on your face, don't go to church, don't go outside, be afraid, be very afraid, and let us take care of it. I don't see any of this as coincidental. And there's so many of us that as skeptical as we may be of one side of the aisle, we then turn right around and run to the other side for a solution, when it seems increasingly like they're both playing exactly the same game and playing us for fools.
So I've said that forever, but I think the lines are being readjusted a little bit, and I'll credit Trump with some of this. And that is, a lot of the folks who are in it for the power and who want to be that elite, what I'll say is the incentive structure has now changed, where those folks seem to find a much easier path on the left, which is why I think that you see a lot of the sort of moderate Republicans of yesteryear resigning and getting out, or switching parties and, kind of coming out as full leftists. I think there's that drift toward that way, because it's going to be increasingly difficult with the position of the Republican Party as sort of the resistance party and the populist party, again, largely thanks to Trump, at this particular point. It's not really easy to be an elite in the GOP right now, because of the level of mistrust and because of the just the years of abuse by the Mitch McConnells of the world. And so I think there's that latent resentment there that makes it a little bit hard to get to the top, even if Trump were not firmly seated there. So I think there is sort of that realignment going on. I think it's reflected in voting statistics very clearly when you look at the class breakdown, where you have college-educated whites overwhelmingly voting Democrat, as opposed to blue-collar folks voting Republican. I mean, this is a pretty clear divide when you look at income, when you look at corporate donations. There is one party that is the party of the elites, hasn't been the Republicans since about 1999. So at least I think that the stats would bear that out.
Yeah.
While I think there's always cynical people trying to get to the top of everything, and that includes the GOP, I think there's a definite imbalance in the amount of that's going on.
Yeah. And Donald Trump does deserve credit for a lot of that switch. I'll give credit where it's due. I mean, there was something in him that really spoke to the blue collar, everyday, whether independent or leaning Democrat. They felt like he was fighting for them. And we see that now in the stats that have swung dramatically the other direction in ways that we haven't seen folks like that being open to Trump or openly supporting the Republican Party as opposed to the Democratic Party, probably in my entire lifetime. So those numbers have dramatically shifted. And what you just said there at the end, Joel, it was important, I think, for us to understand that we need objectivity about this when we talk about kind of the end of the world as we know it, and the fact that our feelings are being weaponized and that's the button that keeps getting spammed over and over and over again in this election. We're not being asked to consider facts. We're not being asked to consider policy positions. It's all personality. It's all feeling. It's all hyperbole. And I mean, we've seen all this before. It is a complete and utter redo. Like nothing has really changed in the race. We've literally seen both of these candidates over and over again on our screens for at least the last half a decade. And so all that's left is your feelings on election day. And is it any wonder then that the easiest buttons to push are anger, fear, are a threat to survival? It's a threat to democracy. The country's falling apart. And while I take all these issues seriously, the reason that I'm in politics is because of the positions that the issues that I care about. It's about the future of the nation. It's about good governance. It's about protecting our rights. It's about protecting life, making sure that we're free to live our lives as we choose, to raise our family in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, to do business in freedom, to be safe in our nation, all of those things. I'm not hearing word one about any of these issues, about the future of our nation, about protecting kids from the trans molestation in our country, about any of these things. We're not hearing about education, immigration, anything. Even from the Trump side. And that is far different than I think any other election cycle before. I've seen the emotional triggers being pulled, but this one is different. It's at new heights of just utterly ignoring issues at this point. It's all about personalities. That makes me very uncomfortable because this is not the world in which we can find any firm footing. And I think, honestly, the people of God have to react in thoughtful and discerning ways. And I'd love to turn the conversation there for a second, because people it's so easy to be influenced by this emotional fervor. We're like trapped in this tornado of both hyperbole and disaster. And it's so easy to be influenced by this. And I think we have to stand out as people that are willing to not just be shifted right along with the rest of the culture and not be one more voice in the chorus of chaos, but to stand firm and say, yet God is on the throne. Am I concerned about the future of the country? Yes. Does who lead the country matters? Absolutely. Right? Absolutely, that matters. Should I be involved? Should I be a voice speaking out against the injustice that I see? Yes, absolutely. All of that is fine. But Christ reigns. and he reigns in my heart, and he reigns in my home, and he's not waiting on the results of an election to tell him whether or not he is truly king of the universe. And he's not surprised by the outcome. To him, November 5th is a memory. It's already happened, and he's already baked it in. And no matter what evil men intend, God is turning it for the greatest good, greater than we can even imagine, and the saving of many souls. I think all of that has to be foundationally laid. And then where do we, as the people of God, go from here? So I guess there's two questions. There's like the civic American answer, and then there's the, there's the Christians, there's the brothers and sisters that are in the middle of this, and God has put us here recognizing for this moment and for this time. So I guess take either one of those paths that you like to respond to, Joel, but specifically recognizing that as Christians, we are called to be different. I think we're called to be steady in a time of chaos.
Well, absolutely. And to keep the first things first. And that's where I think I've been really encouraged over the past, I think, year especially. And this normally does correspond with times of trouble within a country, that there's a spiritual awakening. That's often the case. As C.S. Lewis said, God shouts at us in our pain. And I think there's an element of that where we've seen high profile conversions lately. We've seen an uptick in baptisms and in people searching for spiritual answers to things that they have not looked at for years and years during the age of, eat, drink, and be merry.
Yeah.
And I think that is something to keep at the forefront, because yes, by all means, be involved in your elections. Also, know your neighbors. Meet the people in your community, serve in your church, share the gospel. That's part of this has to be, it's sort of the speech between Elrond and Arwen about Aragorn and Lord of the Rings, where even if everything you hope for comes to pass politically, there's still an end to this. If Trump is elected and serves the next, the rest of his natural life, it's not going to fix things. There's still a spiritual reality that has to be contended with. And so I think that that's kind of the first calling on Christians is remember where your citizenship lies, and that's in heaven, where there's not necessarily going to be in America, as far as we know. So
True.
that heavenly citizenship is first. And so that's not to say that there's not a responsibility within that. I mean, there certainly is a responsibility within that to be a good citizen, to use the gifts and the abilities and the freedoms that God has given us, and every other GOP convention cliche you can throw in there. Sure, yay and amen. But first things first. And when there's a conflict between the two, and not just in philosophy, but in action and reality, where's your money going? Where's your time going? It's the cross first. And I think that's really, I got a little bit irate this morning because there's an extraordinary number of, I would say, borderline blasphemous Trump is Jesus memes going around. And it's just, I mean, look, yes, he's being wrongfully, politically persecuted in the courts. And yes, I plan to vote for him in November, but don't do this. It's really gross. Trump is not Jesus. His trial is not like Jesus's trial. Right. He's not. It's getting really weird. And that's what I'm talking about. That's a danger that I see in this, is that it can become an identity that supplants our identity in Christ. And that's been true of stuff on the left for quite a while. I mean, that's exactly what we talk about when we talk about LGBTQ stuff. So like people who are, quote, gay Christians, where their identity is being challenged and replaced. It's in that sense, keep who you are in Christ first. So I know it was a really long answer to what you asked, but I think that's sort of the more important side of the equation is for God's people, understand, just remember the kids song, right? That this world is not your home. You're just a passing through.
Yes.
So like just hang on to that. You're going to get through this election. And if everything goes terribly and we end up in World War III and all the things you're afraid of happens, it doesn't faze God. Doesn't mean he's not looking out for you. And you will join a huge, vast company of saints throughout all of history, including today in other parts of the world, who are joyfully being persecuted for the cross.
A great
so
cloud
don't shy
of
away
witnesses.
from that.
Yep. We have
don't shy away from that either.
Absolutely. I was just thinking as you were talking, Joel, which, by the way, brilliant answer. And you win double points for both a C.S. Lewis and a Lord of the Rings quote in the
Hey.
span of 2 minutes. So congratulations. The check is in the mail. But I was thinking of Hebrews 12 when you said that. Just in the first couple of verses, we have such a great cloud of witnesses surrounding us. Therefore, so because of all that, let us rid ourselves of every obstacle and the sin that so easily entangles us. So it's all around us. I think there's every opportunity to give into anger, to give into hatred, bitterness, to start seeking revenge. And we have to resist those urges because the people of God are called to a higher standard. The people of God are called to even endure abuse and persecution and yet continue to preach Christ and to obey God. That doesn't mean that we ever lie, or it doesn't mean that we ever manipulate in the cause of that. The ends never justify the means, actually, because Christ is the end. Christ is the author and finisher of our faith. And continuing that in Hebrews 12, we run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking at not the circumstances, not the competition, not how we feel, but looking at Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who, for the joy set before him, endured the cross. Endured the cross. Nothing that we face today, dare I say, in 21st century America is going to be as bad as the cross. And I am the last person to say, we're giving up on America. It's too far gone. It's too far done. I don't believe that this has to be the end of the republic. I know we were joking about it before. I think the glory days of the republic, we have to disabuse ourselves of the idealistic notion and the fact that reality no longer represents that. And it is to our shame and it's to our detriment, because I believe never was so brilliant a founder's dream so brutally squandered by their careless descendants. I'll just put it all out on the table, y'all. We have squandered such a brilliant heritage in so many ways, and yet, because of the grace of God, because of the mercy of God, because we still have a new day, because we still have oxygen left and blood in our veins, and we still have this new opportunity that He has set before us, we still have hope. We are here, and we are here to be lights in this darkened world, in a darkened culture that has forgotten our God, our foundation, what we stand for, and yet He has not left us alone. He has never left us, nor will He ever forsake us. And all of that being said, Christ endured the ultimate shame, the ultimate persecution, and now He reigns and sits at the right hand of God. He has said, I am with you. So what on earth can man do to us? Why should we be afraid? We can recognize the injustice that's happening. We can proclaim the truth, but are we proclaiming with equal fervor? You mentioned the blasphemous false equivalency between Trump and Christ. How many people, how many Christians are out on Twitter now defending Donald Trump with a fervor that they have never used for the name of Jesus Christ? I just want to get real clear here and now, church. We should be speaking the name of Jesus more than the name of Donald Trump. Or Joe Biden, like insert your political hero, quote unquote, here. If we are not putting Jesus first, and I mean literally, I mean maybe if this hits close to home for you, if this is offending you, then I just invite you to count the number of times that you type the name Donald Trump, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden. Pick your poison, America. How many times do you type their name, and do you type the name of Jesus Christ more or less? What conversations are you having? Are you having spiritual discussions? And I'm not saying that those two are absolutely mutually exclusive, but I am saying that we prioritize what we care about. And God's people have to be about Christ. I think that's the only way to save our nation. I really do.
Absolutely. And when you establish that, if you build on and strengthen that foundation, the politics part comes secondary. This was actually a lesson I learned at a church in Des Moines that I really have was for years, really respect. I came into there very passionate about politics, and I was a little bit curious why they weren't, or why they didn't seem to be, because they individually, you get to talk to them, they're all very conservative. They're all very, their Christianity plays into their voting and their political involvement very much, but they don't talk about it much within church and within their circles of community there. Unless you ask, then you're going to go down that trail. But the reasoning was get people saved, and they will, like, if you disciple people, they're going to end up voting the right way. They're going to end up establishing their priorities in a way that makes sense in alignment with the gospel. And so like if you preach the gospel of republicanism, you might win some voters over, sure, but that only goes so far, and it only goes until there is somebody who's able to manipulate them into, taking those principles in a different direction to assume power. And so conversely, if you are teaching people to follow Christ, then that filters into everything else in your life, your parenting, your education choices, your career, your voting, your political donations. All of those things are downstream from what you believe about God. And so I think it's while I absolutely, and by the way, I don't mean that to say that this church never talked about politics. They straight up held political trainings in the church building. So like it was involved. It was just at that point, I was so engaged in it that I didn't want to hear about anything else. And so, but I think that's at this point when I've gone through years and years now of these online battles and these writing articles to go out and fight against other articles from people on the opposite side. And those things are necessary for defense, but they don't really change hearts. And it's the heart of man that is fundamentally the battlefield for all of this. It's not the White House, it's the heart of man. And so got to keep that first. We've just got to keep that first.
Very true, Joel. People are looking for alternatives everywhere, and it's, funnily enough, forcing us to cast every idol down. And yes. I've seen that. Just you mentioned libertarian. Can I rip off the Band-Aid? Have you recovered?
Quickly, do it quickly.
Show mercy. I think it was probably best summed up in a tweet that I saw this libertarian convention, which props to Donald Trump for actually going there. And it was part plea and like pitch meeting and part heckle fest. And that was pretty funny. I saw some really funny interactions between Donald Trump and the libertarians, but Libertarian Convention was held. People looking at that as maybe a possible alternative between two historically unpopular candidates. People are looking for anybody else. And yet, again, probably this tweet summed it up. They went in looking for Ron Paul and came out with RuPaul.
Yeah.
Fair or
I can
unfair?
See that. It's probably fair, and I can't say too much because I've always been very careful to specify I'm a small L libertarian, not a big L libertarian. But yeah, I mean, I saw that too. Credit to Trump for going there. You never know when the 2 to 3% of the vote is going to be your margin of victory. So
right.
I think it's necessary. But the big L libertarians have been. I mean, I think that the Republican Party subsumed most of their actual principled pro-freedom crowd maybe 12 years ago. So I think that's been in the works for a long time. A lot of what's left is people who just don't quite fit into the Democratic mold because they like guns. So I hate to use too broad a stroke there, but that seems to be part of it. He had a lot. I mean, really, it's incredible listening to his speech. He hit on all the right points. I listened to the entire speech, and he hit the right points. And I'll tell you what, if you were a burn it down libertarian, which that's kind of me at this point. If you're a burn it down guy, I don't think you'll ever find a better candidate than Donald Trump. Now, his reasons for doing it are certainly not the reasons that Ron Paul wanted to. Certainly not principle and Austrian economics. But I think I would settle for a good vendetta at this point, and it seems like that's what we made. It's just a chief executive with a really good vendetta against a deep state and against a bureaucratic machine that has turned our federal government upside down.
Can we do it without the masks? Those masks are creepy. Can we do it without the masks?
I would hope so. Yes. Yeah, I think so. It's functionally, I mean, if you look at Trump's first term, much of what he did was at the behest of advisors. He was not a political expert going in. He didn't have the political connections going in, at least not many of them. And he had to take a lot of other people's word for it, which is why you saw judicial appointments that basically just got funneled from think tanks through the, like the Heritage Foundation straight up to Trump, and he would install them, or nominate them rather. And I think I think that has morphed a little bit as a lot of the more moderate elements that attached themselves to him in the first term have sort of seen themselves out one way or another. And if he does win again, I think he's pretty much surrounded with a lot of folks who are quite ready to just light the match on the whole thing. So I'm given all this, especially with the court case and the political persecutions that are going on, I'm actually more excited to vote for him this time than I was in 2020. And that despite the fact I didn't support him in the primary, and I still think it's weird that people idolize him. Okay. All of that said, I'm more excited to vote for him because I think he is actually starting to see now what those of us that have had that distrust in the system have seen a long time ago, and can actually do something about it. So more in that endeavor, more power to him.
More lighter fluid on all of this, please. I know you're not alone, Joel. I think that this has done way more. This whole take him out strategy from the Democrats, I think, is going to backfire on a political level. I'm calling it now. I think this is going to have way more of a positive bounce for Donald Trump. I mean, allegedly, the angry public and the mob crashed their site because they were trying to donate. So many people were trying to donate to Donald Trump's campaign all at once. So if true, I'll put it that way. And Joel, we know that ultimately, I mean, I'm fascinated by all this. You and I have been in this game for a long time. This is unprecedented levels of territory. It's all such a heightened, and I'll use the sports terminology. All the sports commentators love to use the word microcosm. So this is all a microcosm of what's been happening and coming to a cultural boil for many, many years. We've crossed the Republic Rubicon quite a long time ago, but a lot of people are waking up to that. And so now, because of how bold this ploy was and the fact that they think they got one over on Trump, I actually think that it's going to come back to bite them pretty hard. But ultimately, I think the more that Christians can be the voice of reason in the middle of this chaos, even better. So looking at it from an internal perspective, I care about my country deeply, but I care ultimately about the eternal destination of my fellow citizens, of my fellow Americans, of everyone around the world at this time. And if we can be the people that cling to the solid rock in a time when everyone else around them seems shaken, and they realize that the church will never be shaken, that God's people are steady in a time of storm, simply because, not because we're all that, but because he is. Because he is worthy. He is unchanging. He is always faithful. He can be trusted. We can lean on his everlasting arms. And all those great hymns are coming to me, so I better wrap this up, because otherwise we're going to sing one more chorus and pass the plate. Joel Kurtinitis, thank you so much. Any last words before we close?
Just the last thing I had in mind was the tendency that I've expressed before of the left to think a little bit further ahead than the right. So if you're paying attention to all of this, look further than the election. The election's fine. A lot of this is election optics, but there's a plan beyond this that has to do with discrediting people on either side of it far after the election. So I would just say, kind of, the other advice I would have for Christians is keep that eternal perspective. Secondarily, though, even when it comes to temporal things, look a little further, a little further down the road, break out the binoculars and see where this road leads.
Right. And I think that goes along with your earlier comment that it may not be so much about saving the republic, although God definitely can. We can, God willing, actually save the republic, but it starts with revival. And that has to start with us. It has to start in our hearts, our families, our neighborhoods, and our churches. And that's really the only way we're going to have a firm foundation. No other political candidate or idol or hero, no matter how much power you give them, is going to be able to save the nation that we so love. It has to be, it has to come from spiritual transformation. That's the only way that we can have the integrity and be the moral and religious people that the Constitution was fit for, according to John Adams himself. And with that, I bid you adieu. Thank you so much, my friend. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Yes, join the resistance, you rebels with a cause. Let us know what you think and how we can address this in the future, because I think we have to have the spirit of courage. We cannot, for me at least, there's the tendency to want to bunker down, protect our own, and then maybe work out your vengeance at the ballot box. But ultimately, we have to go out and serve, and that is a step of courage. Let's go out and shine. Our mission remains the same. Should we choose to accept it? I think our time is now, church. I really do. God has made us for such a time as this. Will we accept that mission? I vote yes. That mission is to love God, to serve people, and to continue to live free. Thanks for listening to FaithWorks Live. In today's world, security has never been more vital. And at FaithWorks Live, we're proud to partner with VeriGuard Security. It's a professional physical security service, and they're really raising the bar in security and private investigations. Whether you need a team of professional officers to protect what you have worked hard to build, or their mobile security units for multiple properties or large locations, from business or corporate properties to your home or neighborhood. Perhaps you've got an event coming up. They secure quality security coverage for events large and small, because it's about peace of mind and protecting you, your family, your team, and your property. Settle for nothing less than the best when it comes to your security. You shouldn't have to compromise. When it comes to security, you can trust VeriGuard. Contact them today at veriguard.us. That's VARA guard.us. For security service, you can trust VeriGuard. If you've ever wondered what love looks like, check out Agape Pregnancy Resource Center. They offer free services to help women make informed decisions and prepare for their futures. In particular, in a situation of an unplanned pregnancy, women need to know that the truth about their bodies. They need to know the truth about their babies and all of their options. And they'll find that at Agape Pregnancy Resource Center. Go to agapedsm.com and find ways that you can get involved in this amazing ministry, whether it's free pregnancy testing, STD testing, free ultrasounds and counseling, not to mention practical resources, hygiene items, parenting classes, just the list goes on. They change lives. This is a place that truly helps people. And if you care about the women in our community, check out agapedsm.com and click on Get Involved today. Hey, what's for dinner? If you're like me, I hear that 15 times a day. And fortunately, I have a plan. It's typically Anonymous beef at our house. We are such big fans of Anonymous beef at the Haney home because it's just great quality beef. There's no steroids or antibiotics. It's naturally raised butcher beef. They sell by the quarter, the half, or the whole, and they support your local meat lockers so they can help you get it processed in a way that works for you. In this economy, it's good to have affordable options for your meat. And if you're willing to make a good investment in your nutrition for a healthy menu plan, I highly recommend Anonymous Beef. Contact Dave and Mary Lynn at anonymousbeef.com. They welcome your questions. They'll help get you on the schedule. They have locker dates coming up. Don't wait. Secure your locker date today. Go to anonymousbeef.com. That's OHNEMUS beef.com. When a woman faces an unplanned pregnancy, every possible emotion goes through her head. Where can she go for help and for hope? She can go to Intervisions. Here in our metro, we have 2 healthcare clinics where she will find hope and help. From free pregnancy testing and STD testing to free ultrasounds, Intervision serves women and men with STDs who find themselves in vulnerable situations. They're completely free of charge because of generous donations from folks like you. And their medical clinics help their patients get all the information that they deserve that empowers them to make life-affirming decisions. That's what they do at Intervision's healthcare clinics right here in Des Moines. Learn more at intervisionshealthcare.org. That's intervisionshealthcare.org. And you can call 24 hours a day at 515-440-CARE. That's 515-440-2273. There's no better time than now to stand for life, and you can stand with Iowa's original pro-life organization, Pulse for Life. They're the longest-standing nonprofit pro-life organization in Iowa, and they are dedicated to informing, educating, and inspiring a new generation to value the sanctity of all human life, from fertilization until natural death. They serve at the State House, they educate in classrooms, at events. They proudly serve on the coalition of pro-life leaders. They are on the front lines of of the battle against this throwaway culture of death that we see all around us, and we are winning ground. Hearts and minds are changing, and the pro-life movement is continuing to grow. And you can be a part of the exciting things that are happening right here in our own backyard at pulseforlife.org and get your finger on the pro-life pulse. Sign up for their newsletter, find ways that you can make a difference, and how you can change hearts and minds with their pro-life apologetics course, pulseforlife.org.